Calvin Castine at Bob Van Park across the road from Northeastern Clinton Central School on Route 276. We're going to turn our camera briefly over to former Dewey Tavern, a place with great history in the North Country and particularly during the War of 1812 and things surrounding the Battle of Plattsburgh and other events that occurred in and around here. We're here for a dedication today. Woodmen of the World many years ago donated this flagpole to the town for the Bob Van Park. And this year the Woodmen decided to go ahead and buy two historic markers. There's one here and there's one right across the road from Dewey Tavern. Before we leave, we'll be going there to take a look at that one also. This here says Dewey Cemetery, or Cemetery, burial site of Dewey, Newell, Hamilton, and Odell families. Burying ground for War of 1812 soldiers. And presented by Woodman Life, Chapter 462. There's also two markers here that are going to be dedicated today in a ceremony. These have been sitting on the side of the house that was owned by Louis and Rita Bedard, but with the passing of Louis and Rita, it was decided that these markers should be removed so that the new homeowners wouldn't be burdened with deciding what to do with them. So it gives the Dewey Tavern in the path of conflict during the War of 1812. It's French and English. And over this way, town of Champlain in the War of 1812. So these are two historic, I can't call them markers. I'm not exactly sure what the description is, but I'm sure David Patrick will know the exact name of what they are. And we'll be having a ceremony here led by the town supervisor, Tom Trombley. It'll be starting at 10 a.m. on this October 22nd, 2024 at Bob Van Park.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We're here at Bob Van Park in the town of Champlain, and the town of Champlain is proud to present some historical markers that have been put up. They are behind me. There's two interpretive panels. I'll talk a little bit about them in a minute. And the historical markers are new. This one's Dewey Cemetery. There's one over on Prospect for the Dewey homestead. And we have with us, I'm going to start, I guess, from this end here, Jerry Favreau, who's the president of the Clinton County Historical Society. She'll be speaking in a minute. This is David Patrick, kind of like our area historian is what I call him. Calvin Castine, our Clinton County legislator and town of Champlain historian and owner of Hometown Cable. And then David Blitz, the president of the local chapter here of Woodmen of the World, who's Woodman was responsible for donating these historical markers. That's the blue markers behind us and the one over on Prospect. And I want to thank you very much for that donation. And the town is rich in history, and we're very proud of that. This location was the start of it all in 1812 of the war. The Dewey Tavern was a place of refuge or stay for the military, and this cemetery here was where the Dewey family was buried, and we believe there were some military people buried here as well. A few people I need to thank real quick before I pass the mic on is Alan Racine, our highway superintendent. He helped me put these in. I want to thank John Trombley at Modern Mechanical. We were missing the hardware because these interpretive panels were mounted on the side of the house when Mr. Bedard was alive. But since he's passed and the house is kind of in flux in regards to sale, we had to dig up the support legs, and John John put them together for us, and I'm indebted to him. He's always there to help community or municipalities. He's very generous, so thank you.
Why don't you introduce David first, then I can work around whatever hasn't been said before you hand it to me.
Okay. David Patrick, would you please add?
So the history of the tavern is such that Elias Dewey came to Champlain around 1798. Elias and Lovisa. They built a log cabin at that time, which actually still stands behind the house. And then in 1800, he built the main house because the house was on the road between Montreal and Albany. He expanded it to form a tavern. So the original 1800 house and 1798 cabin are still present. It's an amazing log cabin, probably one of the few early settler cabins in the town of Champlain, probably in this entire area. During the War of 1812, his house was frequented by American and British soldiers and entire armies. 3 American armies camped on these fields where the school is, in this field, and all around his house. They tried to invade Canada but were repulsed. On one occasion, the Lacole Stone Mill, about 60 soldiers were injured, and they were taken to the house and cabins, and when they died, they were buried here in the Dewey family cemetery. During the War of 1812, when the British came, they were camped all around the house, and again used this house as a headquarters. When they retreated after the Battle of Plattsburgh, it's supposedly, legend states, some of their soldiers were buried here in the tavern, or in the cemetery. So the cemetery was probably established around 1804 for the Dewey family, and several other related families were buried here. In 1909, a Dewey granddaughter took the visible stones from the cemetery here and placed them at Glenwood Cemetery. The problem was she left about 9 to 14 family members who were buried in the early days of 1800 here in the cemetery. She took the people who had been recently buried 1890s, 1900 to Glenwood Cemetery. Of course, all the soldiers were left here in the cemetery. In 2013, we did some archaeological work and radar mapping. We didn't find any remains, but we have eyewitness accounts that state there's definitely remains here in the cemetery. So I'm happy to have the town of Champlain now own this property, and we had 2 wayside panels made by Lake Champlain Basin Program in the past years, and just in the last few months we had 2 blue and yellow historic markers that were made here, one for Dewey's Tavern, which is across the street from the tavern, and the second one is where we are standing today, that denotes the approximate location of the cemetery. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and that's a brief history of the of Dewey's.
Thank you, David.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jerry Fabro. I'm with the Clinton County Historical Museum, and our mission is to preserve and promote the history of Clinton County. So we are so pleased to be able to be a part of this project to preserve a major part of the Battle of Plattsburgh that happened here on their way as they marched to fight in the city, which wasn't a city at the time. But we're hoping, that this will be the start, maybe the restart of the event happening here again in Champlain. And because a few years ago, I think the Battle of Plattsburgh, they had a major event here. So it would be nice to have that restarted again. So again, our mission is to preserve and promote the history, and I call it Historic Clinton County because it's about all of us. And thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Jerry.
Note to John Trombley, for the time being, Tom has said you're now his favorite cousin, so so we'll second that.
Yeah, but the one without the E.
And we got a lot of, you can imagine the crowd we've got here right now. I can't name you all, but I can see we got Chris Trombley, Janet McFetridge, the mayor of Champlain. We got Ella Blixt, lodge secretary for 462. We got probably the best historian in the area. Celine Paquette is here. We got the brains behind Hometown Cable, Judy Castine. Sorry I can't mention all the rest of you here, but we appreciate the ones who did show up. And of course we got Dave here. As a member of the Bob Venn Park Committee, it does me good to know this is happening. The Bob Venn Park Committee doesn't exist anymore. When we turned the land over to the town, we kind of disbanded because we'd done all we could. As county legislator, you know, I try to promote what we've got up here, and I think we've got a lot going, and I appreciate what Tom has been doing recently to help promote all that. And town historian, obviously, it's very important that we recognize, as has already been said, this most historic building that's sitting here has so much to do with the War of 1812. And it saddens me that if you went across the road here, and this is not a dig to any of the teachers or anything at Northeastern, but if you went across the road and asked students what happened here in the Battle of Plattsburgh and the War of 1812, I doubt if 10% could share with any knowledge on what happened here right on the property that they have, because those troops had 14,000 troops, so they weren't not only just here, they were all the way over to where Celine Paquette grew up there on Oak Street, on Prospect Street in Champlain. There were 14,000 British troops here that came here late August, early September, and they marched on to through Chazy, through Beekmantown. The people in Beekmantown do a nice job every year with the Battle of Culver Hill. Then they went on to Plattsburgh, and after the fleet was defeated, although the land force wasn't defeated, they were slowed down a lot and they were having problems, but they retreated also because they knew without the fleet on the lake, there was no sense for them coming back, going any further. So they came back here, and they didn't leave here, according to Pliny Moore's journal. And of course, David Patrick is a descendant of the Pliny Moore family. They didn't leave here till September 25th, when the last British soldier came here. So they came here late August, September 25th. So for 4 weeks, this was occupied in some sort by the British. And this was one of the last major invasions of the U.S. from the north. So it's important historic property. We're going to also take a look before we leave at the marker that the Woodman has donated across from the Dewey Tavern. Louis and Rita couldn't have been greater people as far as helping to promote all this. Bob Venn Park originally had bought some land on further down on Prospect Street that we'd hoped to utilize. When it became obvious that we weren't going to have the funds for that, I said to Louis, we've given you X number of dollars as a down payment, and we've made some payments on it. I said, you can take that and say we've forfeited, or you could find some property to give us. And the property he gave us for what we'd already given him was probably the best property he could have done. This is an amazing spot. It's got a great location.
Across from the school is perfect.
Yeah, across from the school. And the history here, as has been recorded, is just tremendous. So I'm really proud of this is progressing, and I'm looking forward to the things that Tom is going to be able to do with this Bob Venn Park in the coming days. And Dave, just want to let you say a word or two, or maybe three. Don't pull too long. You can't go too far.
Thank you, Calvin.
I'll hold it. You can hold your.
Oh, I'm all right.
All right. He's all right.
Good morning. I'm honored to be here this morning to present this marker to the town of Champlain. This marker represents part of the history where the Dewey Cavern served during the time of the war. In doing this, we at Woodman Lodge 462 want to keep the history in our town to go forward, to the years to come. Thank you.
All right. David reading Ella's words. Ella wrote that. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I would be very remiss if I didn't do a little promotion for our museum. We're located at 98 Ohio Avenue on the city of Plattsburgh. But better than that, we have artifacts from the Dewey Tavern. One is very special that Dave was able to get for us, was a mirror that has a piece of it broken. If you want to hear the story, you have to come to the museum and see it there. We have other artifacts from the Battle of Plattsburgh, and we'd be very, very happy if you would come and visit and experience those artifacts in person. 98 Ohio Avenue in Plattsburgh. We're open Wednesday through Saturday, 10 to 3, and by appointment. And if my car's in the yard, knock on the door. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We'll finish up here, and we'll go over to the other marker. Anything else we need at this point, Tom? You're in charge.
No, I think the location that was chosen for these is perfect. When you come and visit, you'll notice that the one on my left as I'm facing it is the one of Dewey Tavern. So we positioned it that way. Actually, it was the three of us that did that. So when you're reading about it, you can view the tavern. The other one is on the history of the War of 1812. It's probably just the beginning. We're going to do a lot more here in regards to making sure our history is well documented and displayed.
Right. David?
Just a quick summary on the Dewey Cemetery here. The original cemetery was 1 acre in size, so that's about 200 by 200 feet. There used to be, even when Louis was alive, there used to be a metal gate which was across from the school, that signified the location of the cemetery, and we assumed we would drive in, and as Louis always suggested, that the cemetery was in the higher ground in the sandy section of the field, and where the blue and yellow marker is actually at the bottom corner, southwest corner of the land that Dewey owned, and is likely the location, the bottom corner of the cemetery is where the blue and yellow marker is. So the cemetery may extend up to even the cornfield, which is a little bit north of here, and outward by 100 or 200 feet. Like I said, we still have Dewey family members still buried here. Elias and Lovisa are definitely here. We have eyewitness account of two gravestones that were found in the 1950s that are buried here someplace on the property, and we have at least 60 American soldiers, maybe more, who were buried here on this site, and over the years their bones have been scattered by the plow, but we have definitely eyewitness account of human remains here. So this is a historic site, and we have the location of the panels and the blue and yellow marker at the on the cemetery grounds, which is important.
Thank you, David. I think I must add for you folks that are watching this, because I'm sure you're concerned if there's a cemetery here of what type of construction will take place over the years. So the town just recently, I'm actually have an appointment tomorrow to finalize the paperwork, but we just purchased a piece of land which is all behind everyone standing here, so pointed over in this area. Purchased that from the Robinson family. That's where the majority of the excavation is going to go. That's where we're going to move the parking lot to stay away from this section of ground. I can envision someday we have a plot plan, and we want to put a pavilion in, but it's going to be above ground over in that corner of the property. So this section should be, according to our plans, it will be sacred ground. Let's put it that way.
Okay, and just as another note, I would think that Bob Venn would be very, very proud. He's very much into preserving history, and he would be very proud of what's happening right here. With that, I think we'll move on and go to across the street from the Dewey Cemetery to look at that marker before we go any further. Thank you. Still at Bob Venn Park, we'll be moving over to the other location very shortly. But again, this is the marker. You can look at it here, and this side, you know, both same on both sides. So you can, one side you can view down at the future ball fields, and right here is a view that shows the school in the background, and we got some panels, wayside panels. What do you?
So
David Patrick is going to hold the mic and tell us
yeah,
a little bit about it.
these are two wayside panels I had made with the sponsorship of the Lake Champlain Basin Program and Champlain Valley National Heritage Partnership. They were made around 2011 and 13. They were originally on the Dewey Tavern's house when Louis Bedard was alive, and we moved him to this field here to make a park. As the house was going to be sold. But this is a 1948 image of the property showing the Dewey's Tavern and the barn that used to be here, and this is the south field that we're in, going to Rouse's Point to Champlain, and the box shows approximately where the location of the cemetery was. What's interesting is these are two portraits of Elias and Lovisa Dewey with the grandchild. So these are the two people that originally lived in the tavern. And this is the log cabin, the 1798 log cabin. And you can actually see the axe marks and all of the wood, how it was made on the outside as well as the inside. It's an amazing specimen. That still exists, an early settler 1798 log cabin, which doesn't look like a log cabin so much today, as it's covered with underbrush and some metal siding, but it's an original cabin. This is another panel I had done probably around 2013. And the town of Champlain in the War of 1812 shows all the major skirmishes in the village and in the town. This shows the town, this shows the village of Champlain. And there was a lot of skirmishes in the summer of 1814. Soldiers were killed. Benjamin Forsyth was shot and killed in Canada, brought down and then buried on Oak Street. And Dewey's Tavern was a major focus point of all the events here in Champlain. Here also shows all the events in the village of Champlain. As is often noted, 10 to 14,000 British soldiers marched through Champlain in two wings, and it took 12 hours to march over the bridge in Champlain on the way to Plattsburgh. This marker here shows where Benjamin Forsyth is buried, which is basically in someone's backyard right now. And this is the house, and then this marker here, these markers were done in 1938, show the location of the campground where the American and British soldiers were camped during the War of 1812.
We can't conclude this part here at the cemetery here without talking briefly to Celine Paquette. I know you were involved several times when the Battle of Plattsburgh did their ceremonies up here in Dewey Tavern, and I don't think, as I said earlier, I can't think of anybody who's more involved in the history of the Champlain area than you have been over the years. And you've got your own little, I shouldn't say little, but you've got your own history center there. I call it a museum, you call it a history center, right there on the corner of Elm Street. And, is it nice to see the history of Champlain taking some interest here and people getting involved?
Oh, I am so happy to see this happening, yes, because I'm interested in the history of this whole area. There's been so much, and so much is not known by most of the people living here.
Right.
And it has been one of my aims to try to get this out to people. And of course, we've had help. We've had marvelous calendars that have been put out by David Patrick that give us a lot of history lessons. I think it's great that you guys did this today. It's wonderful that we're preserving this. And yes, we used to have a ceremony for Dewey Tavern every year. It was the beginning of the week for Battle of Plattsburgh, and the first ceremony was here because the troops were here when they headed to Plattsburgh. And of course, it has special meaning to me because I grew up in the house that was the British commissary during the War of 1812. And I'm not so sure I was aware of that when I was living there. But anyway, we certainly are now, and we try to inform more people. So thank you for all the work you do. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Celine. I'd like to point out to people that that invasion started here and ended here. And if you go to Rouse's Point, you could have seen those ships floating by on their way to getting defeated.
Absolutely.
Yes,
so yes.
The big confiance going by there, and
yep.
So a lot of history here. This is right on the border town, and of course it went both ways. I remember a program we did with John LeBrun over in Oldtown. They just what a great historian he was from the Canadian side.
Well, yes, we're right here on the border, so we go back and forth. In fact, Dewey Tavern, I think, entertained, but they took care of a lot of people who were from that side of the border too. So we talk about the American soldiers here, and the Dewey family, but there were Canadians here, there were British here also, and Canadians. Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you, Celine. So here's the second sign. Donated by Woodman Life, Chapter 462. We want to place it far enough from the intersection so that it wouldn't impose a safety hazard if people want to pull over and take a look at it. I assume these little orange flags won't be there forever, but I'm going to hand over to Tom. Tom, who helped dig the holes here and put this in here, him and Alan Racine.
Yeah, hi, it's Tom Trombley again. So this one is on this sign, this wayside is Dewey's Tavern, a cabin built by Elias Dewey in 1798, house built in 1800, site of the American and British encampments and activity during the War of 1812. Not to reiterate everything that was said before, but I do want to point out again on how much the town of Champlain appreciates the Woodman Life Chapter 462 that has made numerous donations to this park. They're very generous and community-minded, and we really appreciate everything they do. And they donated these two signs, which were very costly.
Okay, David, just a couple words, Dave.
This is David Patrick. What we're looking at, what we're here is at the Dewey's Tavern in Champlain. Alan Everest, the late professor of history, said this was one of the most historic houses in Clinton County. We had prisoner of war treaty signed here during the War of 1812 too, and we had American armies camped here, 3 American armies camped here, and the British Army camped here on the way to Plattsburgh. This site here saw a lot of activity during the War of 1812. The house and the original log cabin are still completely intact and stand today. Thank you.
All right, and for people who don't know where we are, I'm guessing maybe less than 3 miles from the Canadian border, and we're between the village of Champlain that way and the village of Rouse's Point that way. And as we said in what was known as the Battle of Plattsburgh, the troops marched through here, and the fleet floated by the shores of Rouse's Point. So when the British invaded, they invaded right through here. So that's going to wrap up this chapter. And again, I'm very grateful to my fellow woodmen for what they've done to help promote the Bob Venn Park and the history of Champlain.